Okay. Good morning, everybody. Morning. Thank you all for being here. This is a great turnout for our event this morning, and really appreciate everyone who's in the room, as well as those watching on the live stream or watching or listening to this in the days after this event as you get ready to vote in these 2025 primary elections in New York City. I'm Ben Max. I'm the executive editor and program director here at New York Law School's Center for New York City and State Law. I see some familiar faces and also some new faces, which is fantastic. We're hosting a lot of great programming here, both election related and government related. And I've also been having a series of excellent guests on my podcast, Max Politics, to discuss the elections and more. Before I get into today's event, which is our debate in the Democratic primary for Manhattan Borough President, just a quick note to also please join us in 2 weeks on the morning of June 17th, 2 weeks from today. We will have a city law breakfast with Congressman Dan Goldman. Please RSVP and join us for that. He will be giving remarks on democracy on the brink, corruption, and the public trust. So please join us with Congressman Dan Goldman on June 17th. Also, back to the election season, our center and New York Law School are co-sponsors of one of the televised official mayoral primary debates. We have the second one that we're partnering with New York One, WNYC, the publication The City, and other partners. That's on June 12th, and will be airing on New York One and other places. So please do tune in for that one. That's the quote unquote leading contenders debate in the Democratic primary for mayor, which will be 7 candidates at least on the stage. The first televised mayoral debate of the two is tomorrow night, June 4th on NBC. So also encourage you to tune in for that, of course. But we are co-sponsoring the one on June 12th, which will be, as I said, airing on New York One and available online in case you don't have New York One on your TV. Okay. This race for Manhattan Borough President is, of course, one of several on the ballot for Democratic primary voters, including competitive races for mayor, for comptroller, for public advocate, and in many city council districts. Primary day is June 24th. Early voting is June 14th to the 22nd, and mail-in voting has begun. We are live streaming today's debate, and the recording will be available afterward on the New York Law School YouTube page, and we'll also post the audio to my podcast feed, Max Politics, in case you need to catch some of it again or share it with other people. I do encourage you to remind your friends and family and neighbors to vote in the upcoming elections if they're eligible. We're happy to be joined today by the 3 Democratic candidates for Manhattan Borough President, Brad Hoylman-Sigal, Keith Powers, and Calvin Sun. Welcome. Our debate will consist of the following: 2-minute opening statements each, which we'll get to in just one moment, and then a series of questions from me that I'll give the candidates either 1 minute or up to 2 minutes to answer. Some of them we'll try to move a little quicker through. There's so many interesting topics to get to. We'll get to as much as we can here with either 1-minute answers or 2-minute answers, depending on the question, and then we'll have a lightning round of yes, no, or very short answer questions probably towards the end. And if we have time, maybe a quick closing statement, but I don't think we're going to have time for that. If a candidate is referenced or criticized, I'll give you a chance to respond in a quick 30 seconds at my discretion. And I'll also use my discretion to ask quick follow-up questions. If I ask you for a little more information, candidates, please don't start a new 2-minute answer. Just give me the quick sort of specificity or additional detail, and we'll move along. But I do like to follow up sometimes, so be ready for that, please. As most of you in this room probably know, the position of borough president has a few key responsibilities and offers a substantial bully pulpit. Borough presidents are expected to be champions for their borough while fulfilling the responsibilities of weighing in on land use change proposals as part of the city's land use review process. They make hundreds of appointments to community boards and other commissions, boards, and panels, including the Panel for Education Policy and the City Planning Commission. And borough presidents get to try to influence the city budget, and they get to allocate a pot of capital funding for borough infrastructure projects. Borough presidents, I'll note, have a better track record of becoming mayor in recent decades than any other borough or citywide position, given 2 borough presidents, David Dinkins and Eric Adams, have ascended to mayor. The current Manhattan Borough President, of course, is Mark Levine, and he's one of the leading candidates to become the next city comptroller, running in that Democratic primary this month. And that is why the position is open with no incumbent, and we have our 3 candidates in the Democratic primary here today. Opening statements, 2 minutes each. We'll start with Senator Hoylman-Sigal. Please begin.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, New York Law School. And thank you to everyone turning out. It's a really good crowd, a mixture, I think, of stakeholders, government operatives, some press, community board members, which is a key responsibility of the borough president, and campaign staffers. I'm State Senator Brad Hoylman-Sigal. I'm running for Manhattan Borough President because we need an effective champion to fight Trump and protect the borough. I've been a state senator for the last 12 years. I represent the west side of Manhattan from Christopher Street, home of the historic Stonewall Inn, the birthplace of the LGBTQ human rights movement, all the way up to West 103rd, or as my team likes to say, who are here, from the gay bars to Zay bars. Thank you. That never gets old. You know, I see a lot of the issues in this race, Max, really through the eyes of being a public school parent to two young daughters, age 7 and 14. Will they be able to afford the rent in Manhattan when they're older? Do they feel safe on the subways? Will they continue to have access to the highest quality public schools, cultural institutions, and healthcare? Well, I've been working on a lot of these issues and more in my career, including getting illegal guns off the street by passing first in the nation legislation to ban ghost guns and hold gun manufacturers responsible for their design defects. Cracking down on e-bikes, which is a constant complaint and a valid one. I passed the first bill in Albany that would require gasoline-powered scooters to be licensed at the point of sale. So you can't take out a scooter now from a retail establishment without getting a license first, and that helps with enforcement and a lot of accountability in different areas. Protecting our immigrant community, who we know are under attack by the Trump administration. What happened just a few blocks from here to the staff member of Congressman Jerry Nadler when an ICE official handcuffed a government employee was absolutely deplorable, and we have to stand up to it. I passed legislation in Albany, Max, that would require ICE to present a valid search warrant when they enter courthouse grounds.
Thank you.
And then finally, let me just say I've been endorsed by New York State Attorney General Tish
We'll come back to you real soon.
Dan Goldman
for next,
and Jerry
next
Nadler.
round.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Councilmember Keith Powers, opening statement, please.
Thank you and good morning. You guys are the diehards if you were here this morning. So thank you for being with us. Thank you to Ben Max for moderating. I think Ben Max has moderated like 90% of the debates I've ever been in my life. Nice to see everyone. Look, this race and the city's elections this year are really about the future of Manhattan, the future of our city. For the last 8 years, it's been my privilege to represent a community where I was born and raised on the east side of Manhattan. I'm a resident of Stuyvesant Town. I'm a tenant. I'm a rent-stabilized tenant who has been fighting for better housing both before and throughout my time here in the city council. We are facing in this city right now an affordability crisis that is driving middle-class and working families out of the neighborhoods where they were born and raised, where they grew up. We are failing to address that by continuing to invest in outdated policies that stop us from building the housing that we need in this borough right now and throughout this city. And frankly, not providing enough leadership to really lower the cost of living and drive down the housing costs here. And for folks like myself who have been here throughout their lives, that is a real struggle they are feeling right now. And that's why I'm running for borough president. During my time in the city council, we have taken bold action to try to drive down the cost of living here, whether it's passing a citywide plan that would deliver tens of thousands of new units throughout the city, defending tenants in places like Stuyvesant Town from losing thousands of rent-stabilized apartments, defending seniors who are going to lose their homes in a Mitchell-Lama complex when it aged out of that, and making sure we got to work to use land use powers to protect them. But in my campaign, we're looking at big ideas to move this borough forward. That includes building 100,000 new homes, using the borough president's office to drive that conversation here in the city, to use new tools that we can power in the borough president's office to tackle public safety, to tackle quality of life, to reimagine the borough president's office and re-centralize its role in the housing conversation and how we tackle everyday issues, to thinking big about our transportation system, because as we ask people to get in our subways and buses, we better have a borough president who rides them too and is willing to invest in a better future for them, and to open up our open spaces to make sure that Manhattan continues to invest in the great parts of our city, and the things that make it great. That's why I'm running for borough president. I hope to have your vote on June 24th.
Thank you. Dr. Sun.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, community members. Thank you, New York Law School, for hosting. I'm grateful to be here, but let's face it, we're here because we're in the middle of a public health emergency right now. A mass casualty in our housing, our education, our employment, our public safety, and our health. I represent the legion of healthcare workers who've been burnt out since the pandemic, where things have only gotten worse and not better. Many of us are leaving. I mean, it's a bad sign if a doctor's running for office. My name is Dr. Calvin Sun. I'm an emergency physician, a small business owner, and a born and raised lifelong Manhattanite. I attended both public and private schools, PS 158, Trinity, Columbia for undergrad, then began my medical training as a patient advocate at Bellevue Hospital, a red shirt, and then medical school in East Flatbush, Brooklyn at SUNY Downstate, and then specialized in emergency medicine at Jacobi and Montefiore Medical Centers in the South Bronx. And then for 2 years, I led medical teams across half a dozen hospitals, fighting to save the lives of my patients, my neighbors, and my colleagues. But the way we've been working and living since and then is literally killing us. Doctors are becoming even their own patients. Last year, I discovered my own cancer in the middle of a shift when my right kidney was removed on July 2nd, 2024 because of a malignant tumor. All the tests and genetics workup, family history would indicate no reason why a healthy 37-year-old guy like me would have cancer other than maybe the background stress of fighting a pandemic for 2 years without adequate personal protective equipment or government that seemed to leave us for dead. And that same background stress is killing our New Yorkers today, where they're coming in, not because of medical emergencies, but because they have nowhere else to go, where every working day of my life has been every New Yorker's worst day of their lives. On top of being a cancer survivor, though, I'm also a husband. My wife, Mel, and I just got married, and we want to raise a family here in the only home we've ever known. But like so many, it feels like we're on a countdown to being priced out. So we still want to run to reassure the New Yorkers it's possible to raise a family here in this great city of ours, a city that is healthy, safe, resilient, thriving. I'm imagining our future children running up and down these streets, calling this place their home just like I did.
Thank you.
But that home is sick. Manhattan needs to heal. Therefore, it's about time a doctor runs for office.
Thank you. All right, we're going to mix in some very substantive questions about the role of borough president and some other things to sort of get to know you and your leadership and your approach to government. So this is helping voters get to know you in a bit of a big picture way. We'll start with Mr. Powers this time. In 1 minute, who is your political role model or hero and why?
Look, when it comes to the people that I knock on the doors every day, and I'm not pandering to this, like I really, as I've been knocking the doors every single day and talking to middle class and working class people in this city, those are the people I am looking forward to working for and working with. And of course, I have big aspirational political figures here that I care about. But what I care about is the people in this city right now that have been left behind. Our public housing residents who have had disinvestment in their housing for decades. The New Yorkers who I knock on every door who are feeling like public safety is not getting addressed. In fact, getting on the subway every day is still a gamble, and are feeling left behind by our public safety system. And people who, like Calvin noted, like us, native New Yorkers who feel like the question about whether they're going to have a middle class place to live and families are going to exist here in the future, and the question of whether you have to be a millionaire or more to live in Manhattan, those are the people I'm fighting for. Those are the role models I have. And that's why I'm running for borough president.
Hard to go first on that one.
Hard to go
and
first.
I appreciate all that
That's okay.
answer.
That is the truth.
Anyone in politics you look up to? Any mentors?
Yeah.
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. Okay. Dr. Sun, political role model or hero and why?
I'm a radical pragmatist and a compassionate pragmatist. If I could merge the administration of Bloomberg with LaGuardia, then that would be ideal. And I think we need to ensure that not only are we pragmatic with our policies and the things that we get done for New Yorkers, but you need an effective communicator so the constituents understand how and what we're doing to help your way of life better, so that there's a merging of the two, because you can't just do the right things. You also have to communicate at the same time, just like a good doctor.
And Senator.
Yeah, I would say, look, my political role model for this office in particular and maybe in life in general, is Gail Brewer. She ran the office with such aplomb through collaboration, by bringing parties together, whether they're on one side of the issue or the other. She brought together community board members, stakeholders, YIMBYs and NIMBYs, government officials, lobbyists. I can almost remember, Max, every stale donut and lukewarm cup of coffee I had in that conference room. I'm sure many of you do as well. But that's the job of a borough president, to collaborate. And other strong women like C. Virginia Fields, Ruth Messenger, two former borough presidents who have taken this job even further after office, and of course, our great Attorney General Tish James. Women in office deserve to be admired, supported, and I look up to them. I'm proud I have the endorsement of those women, but I'll add...
Coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll add that I do admire Jerry Nadler and Dan Goldman. You can look up to see whether they've endorsed me or not. Thank you.
They have. All right, 1 minute each again here, starting with Dr. Sun. A lot of these questions will wind up having some different perspective given your professional background while we have two office holders here, but you all candidates will make of these questions what you will. What is your professional accomplishment you're most proud of? Please try to be very specific, especially our elected officials. What is your professional accomplishment you're most proud of and why? Go ahead.
Graduating medical school. I was not going to make it. I'm not the greatest test taker, but I was able to succeed because of multiple avenues of opportunity that were beyond the test that New York was able to give to me. After my father died when I was 19 years old of a sudden heart attack, my mom left me behind at the old St. Vincent's Hospital alone to be with her family in Elmhurst because she had late-stage Parkinson's. So I wandered the city alone for 2 years, just becoming a bartender, figuring my life out. I actually gave up the idea of going to medical school. But through a series of serendipity and kismet, same ones that led me here on this stage right now, I ended up going to med school, graduating, going to residency, starting a small business during that time, leading a community of thousands, and now running for office because I think we should add more voices like mine to the stage.
Thank you. Senator?
Well, I passed the Child Victims Act. I helped get illegal ghost guns off the street. I protected tenants during COVID from eviction. But the one I'm most proud of is tightening our vaccine laws during the height of the measles outbreak in 2019. We've seen that replicate in places like Texas and Arizona under this MAD administration's policy toward vaccine research, but New York is protected. We may have saved thousands of children who were sickened by measles and were threatened with measles, those who couldn't be vaccinated, and adults who may be suffering with immunocompromised systems. So I would say that 2019 bill is something that I will always look to as real courage on the part of my colleagues who were faced with anti-vaxxers. Myself protested at my apartment and elsewhere because we passed this bill, but we won, and now we got to fight RFK Jr. and the Trump administration in the same vein.
Are people like yourself who support vaccines and regular immunizations and so forth losing the national battle? And if so, why?
Great question. I do think we are on the precipice. The amount of misinformation that's on social media that our own HHS Secretary RFK Jr. is spewing, the fact that there's such waffling on the part of some public officials who know better. I mean, Dr. Sun would be, in a better position, but I'm really afraid that we have discounted the fact that vaccines prevent illness and that we actually have vaccines that can prevent cancer.
Thank you.
Specifically. So I think we need to lean into science, lean into health policy, and fight.
Thank you.
For full immunization on the part of our school kids.
Councilmember,
Thank you.
professional accomplishment and why?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned at the beginning of the outset here, we are in a housing crisis and it requires bold action. Does not require sort of wish-washy politics at this point in time. We have to be bold, we have to lead. And I think my record on housing has been something I've been really proud of. That's talked about saving thousands of tenants from losing rent stabilization, protecting hundreds of seniors that were losing their homes when they were questioned about the future of their neighborhoods. And frankly, we talked about this. We passed a historic plan for new housing here in the city last year. That was not easy. Well, the city council had a large debate about that and the future of it. I was proud to be an early voice to make sure that we actually do our jobs here to build housing here, to stick my neck about it. And frankly, also early in my career, standing up to make sure that every single community, every single neighborhood in this city stands up and does its part when it comes to making sure that our homeless neighbors here have a good place to live. The New York Times lauded that work, saying that I showed a compassionate way to treat our homeless neighbors and make sure we, as every single elected official, help make sure we solve for that crisis.
Sorry, what are you referring to there?
So early on, when we're talking about the billionaires no shelter crisis, and standing up to make sure that every single community, every single council member, every single elected official, frankly, is on the right side of that issue.
Okay. We are going to talk more about housing in just a couple minutes, and obviously the land use review process is maybe the core responsibility of the borough president, so we'll get to that in a minute. But putting housing and affordability aside, which again polling shows is the top issue on voters' minds this election season right now, I'm asking you each to identify one other issue facing Manhattan, something you hear about in this campaign, and exactly what you plan to do about it as borough president. We're going to start again with Councilmember Powers. You can keep going here. Sure. What is a top concern of Manhattanites, and what will you do about it in the borough?
Public safety and crime. It's the next to housing, the #1 issue that New Yorkers are deeply concerned about. It'll go to any single neighborhood in this borough and probably, frankly, this city right now. And it's the #1 thing New Yorkers are talking about is people are still feeling unsafe about getting on the subway. I talked to a voter yesterday who says, I'm riding the bus every day because I am afraid of getting on the subway system. They feel like there's no plan for mentally ill people right now to find them services or housing or anything of that sort. And I guess the question is why? And the question is because we have been exposed in Albany for the last 6 years to laws that have left us less safe, like period. And so as borough president, we're going to go to places like Albany and ask for more common sense policies and solutions to our public safety system. I did that this year during the legislative session. We are going to call for more adequate resources and resources inside of our local police precincts, inside of our neighborhoods to make sure we have foot patrols and basic services here. I have called for the commissioner to stay on her job. I think she's deeply popular and doing a fairly good job right now here in the city, driving down shootings, driving down violent crimes. So let's keep our leadership, Jessica Tisch, in office. And let's have a borough president who has the tools to tackle quality of life issues. I proposed a metric so that every single neighborhood could see how we're doing when it comes to solving the quality of life issues inside their own neighborhoods. Let's put that to use, and let's use a borough president's office to drive that. So those are 4 or 5 tools, but it starts with getting common sense laws back on our books.
There's probably going to be multiple times where Albany means the state legislature and a reference to you, Senator Hoylman. So why don't you take 30 seconds if you want before you go into your answer to respond on public safety laws that have been passed. I assume that's, well, Councilmember Powers, why don't you explain exactly what you're referring to there?
Bail reform, dangerousness standard being failure, involuntary commitment, mental health beds being disinvested in. The list goes on and on. We don't even have, we can't walk into a CVS today and get a common sense policy to get toothpaste. Like that's what I'm talking about.
All right, Senator Hoylman,
yeah,
you've been
sure,
part of the legislature passing bail reform, discovery reform, et cetera. Do you want to respond?
Well, you know, I got to say, I'm proud that we have looked at criminal justice through a social lens. This is so crucial. I mean, we all remember Khalif Browder, you know, who suffered for years on Rikers and died, you know, just a couple of years from suicide after he was released. He never had a trial. He never appeared before a judge.
It's not about.
He was accused.
Hold on, let him finish. Let him finish.
He was accused for stealing a backpack. We have readjusted that, and I think that's crucial. And every time we've looked at our bail reform laws and our discovery laws and our laws around involuntary commitment, we've looked at the data and we've made informed decisions to change those laws to the response of the facts on the ground. This is not about Fox News talking points.
It's about Fox 5 talking points. It's the local news and what New Yorkers are talking about.
Real lives in the criminal justice system. And as Manhattanites and as Democrats, I stand by our work.
Well, we can come back to this a little bit more. Senator Hoylman, I want to give you a chance on this particular question of a challenge that you're hearing from Manhattanites and exactly what you do about it as borough president.
Well, you know, I'm hearing from a lot of my fellow Manhattanites about quality of life and addiction and mental health and crime, including auto thefts. You know, one thing we shouldn't do is plop down a casino in the middle of all these problems. And that's the call to action on the part of a bunch of well-moneyed lobbyists and people who are proposing to make millions of dollars off of our quality of life. And I say no to that. And I've got a plan as well in addition to opposing a Manhattan casino, full stop, I'm going to work to ensure that we have more cops. We can't take them out of our precincts, but we need more on the platforms. We need clinicians on the platforms. We need to tighten our laws around petty larceny, something I did by now making certain that those who steal items from stores and then put it on sale online are held accountable.
Thank you. We'll leave it there. Dr. Sun, top issue you're hearing about and how exactly you'd address it as borough president.
I'm a little biased. It all comes down to our health. And it's not just your physical health or your emotional health, but the social determinants of health, or how public safety, education, your employment, your food insecurity, housing insecurity are all tied to your health outcomes. 80% of your health outcomes is actually beyond our direct medical care. And the majority of patients that come into our emergency rooms are because of policy failures out of our control. We do $1 million workup to find out that your chest pain, your headache, your shortness of breath are actually fine physically, but because something else that's bothering you that's way beyond what we can handle in the emergency room. Doctors are functioning as essentially as social workers more than they actually as doctors these days. Because asthmatic patients, because of poor air quality, we can fix that, but we're sending them back to the very same place that triggered their asthma in the first place. Now, I can't change air quality as a doctor, but maybe I can as an elected official. So the plan is to actually, as a street medic and also the chief medical officer of the New York City Marathon at the finish line, I've seen how we can build up medical tents within hours on a nonprofit's budget every weekend. Building medical tents in your neighborhoods, bringing healthcare to your doorstep, being preventative with our healthcare so that you are getting your healthcare in the comforts of your home rather than coming to us in the hospitals for your primary care needs will save billions of dollars in healthcare waste and expenditures and then can be reinvested into housing and public safety and other social determinants of health to improve health outcomes for more New Yorkers.
I want to come back to the public safety discussion now for another minute. Mr. Powers, you're talking about changes in state laws that you say have led to increases in crime that we've seen in the pandemic era. Can you say in a minute more direct correlation there that you believe, or causation that you believe? What exactly about those changes in laws led to an increase in crime?
Yeah, look, I don't think anybody's arguing that there are not well-intentioned meanings behind it. And I think it's a little disingenuous to say that that was, of course, the spirit of it was to try to make a much fairer system. And I think we all agree with that as Democrats. And I think calling them Trump lines is deeply disconnected from where New Yorkers are right now. I think it's deeply disconnected from the real life experience of people I'm talking to every single day who are saying that. So when you hand wave it as a Trump issue, you are largely ignoring like the 90%.
What exactly is your argument?
Here's a basic one. Here's a basic one. Let's take a well-intentioned law that many people agree was good to move forward, but did not work. That was discovery reform. Right? That took years for the legislature sitting on their hands to finally do something about. I actually called for it this year to get reformed. They had to wait 2 months to not get their paychecks to finally do it because the governor asked them to do it, while all the DAs, the progressive DAs, the moderate DAs, the upstate DAs, the downstate DAs were all asking them to do it. We know this was not working, even though it was well-intentioned, and the DAs have been saying that for years. So so what does that lead to? That leads to cases being dismissed regularly, and misdemeanors and other things that were not getting the attention they were. And we know that these weren't working because they did finally go and fix it. Bail too. They filed this 3 times.
Let's leave it there. That's actually my question for Senator Hoylman. You did pass these laws, and then bail and discovery both had at least one time needing to be updated in your view. You just updated the discovery law. Bail has taken a few times.
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you. I got it.
That's a good thing.
So talk
That's a
about
good
that
thing.
legislative process. But was there an issue with the original legislation that came through Albany? This is a conversation in the mayoral race right now.
That's how you legislate,
Let me just finish
Yeah.
1 second. The former governor, obviously, who was governor at the time, is now running and saying that those laws needed changing. So was there an atmosphere in Albany of error at that time, of going too far? Go ahead.
Yeah, there was well, again, I think we're data driven, and I appreciate that from the leader of the state Senate, Andrew Stewart Cousins. We don't just like dive into an issue and change it because, look, you can say Fox 5, you can say New York Post, you can say Donald Trump.
New York One,
because the right
CBS,
wing-
WPIX.
Because the
speak,
right
please.
wing is telling us to do something. No, we live in a deliberative democracy. We need information. We need data to be informed. And so what my colleague is complaining about, we fixed. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And we also fixed the discovery law and have tightened our laws around involuntary commitment. I think that's a success in Albany. And I think you've seen
If that is the
crime rates-
let him
measurement
fin-
of
let him finish.
success,
Please let him
crime
finish.
rates,
Go.
you've
We have
seen
to do way
crime
better.
drop in the city. Now, I don't think any or most of this is correlated, but because crime, I think we all know, can be a national trend. That said, I think we responded, and I think we responded
you.
accordingly. And
Ms.
I'm
Powers,
proud of
we're
my
gonna-
colleagues for not putting their head in the sand, for actually looking at the issue and making changes. That's responsible legislating.
We're going to move on. Dr. Sun, I'm going to give you a minute on public safety, on anything you just heard, or how you want to weigh in on the topic at hand.
I'm a results-based guy. You can't have public safety without public confidence. And right now, it feels like we have neither. The perspective of the emergency rooms. I have to take care of both the perpetrator and the victim at the same time. And right now, it felt like, as I'm looking back at my life here, decades ago, crimes were committed out of desperation. Now they feel like they're committed out of mental illness. And maybe that's what happens when we're deprived of the mental health resources we need, the inpatient psychiatric beds that has been defunded. And we need to reinvest in those programs, increase the number of psychiatric beds, but also increase the incentivization to going into mental health and social work, increase the wages of our social workers and mental health therapists, and also ensure that the first responders on the street are trained and licensed professionals. They are trained to de-escalate and not detain. That way we can make it visible and also community rooted and locally based so that Manhattanites can see this happening on the street and ensure that we get to the root cause of our public safety concerns, prevent them from escalating into violence, and ensure that Manhattanites actually truly feel safe when they see first responders or licensed, trained, locally based social workers helping their neighbors.
I'm just curious in your perspective, Dr. Sun, on the changes in involuntary removal laws that were just passed. Do you agree with changing the standard around involuntary removal to be a little stricter or a little looser, I should say, I guess, around whether someone is able to care for themselves?
That's like a Tuesday evening for me, or Saturday night on a July 4th weekend. Do you know how many people we involuntarily have to control in the emergency room because they don't hurt my patients? Most of the emergency rooms I work in New York City, and I worked pretty much all of them, have no individual rooms. You can just get up and punch the fellow patient next to you, or hit on them, or ask them for their number, especially if you're emotionally disturbed. And obviously the first line—
But do you agree with changing the law? They just—
we need to make it, we need to allow it for more involuntary restrictions, especially if you're an emotionally disturbed patient, because that's what we do anyway, every day.
Thank you.
Could I respond?
Very quickly.
Yeah, just to say that, I'm very proud that a bill I authored with Assemblymember Micah Lasher called the HELP Act, which expands the number of licensed mental health professionals who can make that very serious determination that somebody needs to be directed into treatment, was included in this year's budget. So I completely agree with Dr. Sun.
30 seconds on this.
Yeah, look, we have disinvested in our mental health system for a very, very long time. I'm grateful that they finally did get to work to actually solve for it, but we should never in the first place have lost all the critical mental health beds or the mental health services that New York City and Manhattan frankly needed. And we're seeing a crisis take place because of that disinvestment. And so we have to get to work to build more beds here in Manhattan, to update our standards, and to not treat our subways like a mental health system.
All right, we're going to come to the role of borough president a little bit more. We are going to come to the more formal powers in a few minutes still on land use review and appointments to community boards and other bodies. We're getting to that real soon. But to go big picture here, other than those sort of prescribed powers and responsibilities, what's something else, and we'll start with Dr. Sun on this, what's something else about the potential of the borough president position that you would embrace? Some part of the role that you would accentuate, a way you might seek to expand the reach of the office? Obviously, borough president has a few of those prescribed responsibilities, and then it's a bully pulpit. It's an opportunity for bringing people a convening power, et cetera. How would you embrace the role outside of those sort of prescribed responsibilities?
I would embrace its potential to listen and to make its constituents feel heard, and then to act on the root cause of what they've heard as the borough president, and then act urgently. Same thing you would expect from someone trying to take care of you, whether it's an emergency physician. We have very little information by the time you come to us. We listen to as much as we can from the EMS or a family member, and with nothing about you other than what we heard, we act urgently and get to the root cause to take the minutes that you have to expand them and stabilize your issue, to expand the minutes so that more resources can come in and bring you to a cure. The same way that we're facing a mass casualty right now, our job as as hopefully the future borough president, will listen to its constituents from this vantage point of a big picture, all the neighborhoods, to gather that information, get to the root cause, and then act urgently, using that information to leverage against our partners or with our partners on city council to legislate based on these neighborhood and community-specific concerns, so people who have been speaking to the borough president can actually see results immediately and urgently.
Thank you. Councilmember Powers?
Yeah, look, I think that we have an ability here to almost act like a mini mayor for the borough when it comes to delivering services to every single neighborhood. I prepared a plan that I essentially call like a neighborhood report card to make sure that every single community is getting the services they deliver. How are we doing on public safety response times? How are we doing on sanitation cleanup? How are we doing on taking down that scaffolding, responding to noise complaints, doing the issues that we're hearing about a lot that New Yorkers are concerned about, and really having a better, wholesome way to address, a wholesale way to address those. So acting in a way that actually is more proactive about bringing service to us. I know we'll talk about housing, so I'll talk about the role the borough president, I think, can play in a larger way around housing. But I think on the neighborhood issues, you can feel right now certain neighborhoods are getting a whole lot of good services here. They're getting homelessness outreach to help get people to housing. They're getting sanitation services, other critical services, and many are being left out of the picture. So I proposed a model where we can actually use data to look at how every single neighborhood is doing, use the borough president's office to get the commissioners into a room and start actually making sure that neighborhoods are feeling lifted up and empowered in a way that I feel like they feel left out right now.
Thank you. Senator?
What was the question again? I'm sorry, I've kind of lost
Just
it.
along with the prescribed responsibilities of the role, what's something else about being borough president that you would either embrace or try to expand a way
Oh,
you would
wow.
fill
That's
the
a
role?
great question, now that I understand it. Because, I often think about that, Max, in terms of young people and older people in New York, how they can get involved. What can they do to contribute to civic society? And look, I got to give credit to the current borough president who's established a volunteer corps. Because we need to ask the question, who's going to be the next Charlie Rangel? Who's going to be the next Virginia Key? Who's going to be the next Hazel Dukes? And where are they going to come from? The borough president's office, outside of its formal responsibilities, is a really important 360 view of our borough, the only person who speaks for 1.6 million Manhattanites and can encourage civic involvement at all levels of our community. So I would certainly want to continue Borough President Levine's effort and expand it further, because one of the questions, if folks aren't asking about e-bikes or about Trump, they're saying, what can I do, Senator, to get involved and make a difference in my neighborhood?
Thank you. Sort of in line with some of that line of thinking, foreign tourism to the United States and thus New York City is basically dropping off a cliff thanks to some of the federal administration's policies. Should the city be doing anything to help negate this? And is there a role for the borough president in this? Senator Hoylman, let's stick with you.
Well, I've made arts and culture one of my centerpieces of my campaign. I've represented Broadway. I think you do too, council member, and also a lot of theaters on the west side. So to the extent that the borough president's office can provide more muscle in funding for arts and culture, and it's not just the big dogs, the museums, but it's the smaller museums, the neighborhood-based museums, the neighborhoods in Washington Heights and Harlem and Chinatown that need the support of government. Let's face it, federal funding for arts and culture has been decimated, if not eliminated completely. So I would certainly be a champion for the arts, a champion for Broadway and off-Broadway, a champion for live music, and someone who really relishes the role of celebrating our amazing culture. That's why young people want to move to Manhattan. It's not just the jobs on finance on Wall Street, but it's the excitement that arts and culture bring to our city.
Thank you. Councilmember?
Yeah, thank you. Look, we have to, in the borough president's office, should be the chief tourism advocate for the borough of Manhattan, I think in New York City as well. We actually have seen borough presidents, I think Marty Markowitz and others had a tourism bureau right inside of their office. So we have seen a model where it can be done. And look, and to the senator said, like, and I give him a lot of credit. He has been a really good champion for the arts and cultural institutions during the pandemic. He and I stood together around Broadway venues, around independent venues. We may debate on other things. I will never question your credentials and on standing up for
pedicabs.
For pedicabs. Look, and we have a bill for that. But I think we both deeply desire and care for taking care of like arts and cultural institutions here in the city that do drive so much tourism. But the fear that's coming in right now, a lot of it is tourism from places like Canada, where they feel like the tariffs and the rhetoric are dangerously hurting their willingness or ability to come here. So we have to boost confidence in them, number one. Obviously, always do the basics, keep these neighborhoods safe and keep them just from less disrupted. But also we have an opportunity in this budget this year for something I'm fighting for, just boost our tourism budget here in New York City. We have an agency that does that. They're underfunded. I'm talking a lot about how we can get them out there and deploy resources all over the world to get New York people to come and visit New York.
Thank you. Dr. Son, a role for the city or the borough president's office in combating the drop in tourism?
Yeah, New York City is the capital of the world and has been, and it should always reflect that. And as a born and raised New Yorker, I remember before I started my small business, I joked I've never traveled because what's the point of spending all that money to visit places you're never going to move to anyway, because the world comes to New York. Then I started a small travel business on visiting every country in the world and finding out where New Yorkers came from. And what we did was we created a community of thousands of people around the world who all now want to move to New York because we're ambassadors when we go out there, and they come to us because that's what makes New York great. It's the engine, and therefore the borough president's office, with that perspective, should do more of a marketing campaign to reassure the world that New York is a safe place to visit, a safe place to see and procure, and also consider moving to. But right now we have a lot of forces that be that's far beyond us, that's making it very difficult. So we have to not shirk in the face of that responsibility to encourage the world to still see that New York is a beacon of innovation and a place that will move this world forward.
It's a great segue to the next question, which we'll start with. Stay on the mic. We'll start with you, Dr. Son. So let's sort of think big a little bit here and exciting about the future. What's a big or exciting project or initiative you would pursue as borough president that speaks to sort of the future of Manhattan, excitement about Manhattan, shows vision? Perhaps it's something exciting that you'd be interested in exploring, or reviving an old project, or something new you'd pursue. What's something exciting, big picture for Manhattan's future that you would pursue as borough president?
I guess in the context of optimism, it would be keeping those medical tents or turning those medical tents into community health hubs. And what I mean is there are about 52 neighborhoods in Manhattan. I want 52 medical tents, 52 weeks in a year, where we're bringing healthcare to you, and you don't have to come to the hospitals anymore. So you don't have to slip and fall and catch a disease and bring it back to your communities. We'll bring the healthcare to you with the technology of remote access to your charting, all the hospital systems communicating together like it once did during the pandemic, and do it in peace times where we're bringing your med refills, listening to you, and ensuring that your health outcomes are improved by being in preventative, incentivizing making money off of preventive medicine. So you can make money by saving money. All those billions of dollars put into our public health hospitals now are just sitting there because they're not coming to the public health hospitals and public hospitals anymore, which then can be used to renovate, retrofit, and make our hospitals more efficient. Those billions of dollars can then be reinvested into small businesses to drive up more revenue, to housing, to promote a culture of investment rather than trying to pay back debts.
Thank you. Councilmember, big idea?
I have a lot. I'll start with, we're right now going through a plan to rezone the entirety of Midtown South, which would generate tens of thousands of new units by accelerating office conversions, which you can help solve for our housing crisis, but also make good use of these buildings that are outlived their purpose here. I'm really excited about that. We're investing a lot of money now in Fifth Avenue to redevelop and retransform Fifth Avenue to be a pedestrian-centered place like many other cities. I'm very excited about that. We put out an idea to help create a new busway on 34th Street and accelerate bus service all throughout our borough. I'm riding every bus as part of the campaign to highlight the need for it. We're deeply excited about that. In my district, we're transforming the Park Avenue medians to make them more exciting and usable. And this is just in the Midtown piece of it. I'm deeply excited about that. I have 50 ideas out there on the website. Go check it out.
On the Fifth Avenue redesign, quickly, are you pleased with that design? There was some talk about issues around excluding protected bike lanes in some way.
Yeah, I'd like to see a protected bike lane.
And is that going to happen? Are you?
I'm pushing for it.
Senator, big idea.
Big ideas. Well, I support Councilmember Power's efforts in connection with Fifth Avenue, and I'm proud to have been one of the earliest champions for the 14th Street Busway. The council member knows about that as well. But, you know, big ideas. You know what's a big idea? But it shouldn't be. Kids need to know how to read. And I have a 14-year-old daughter. My husband and I didn't find out that she was dyslexic till she was in the 4th grade. And that's about 4 grades too late. And I've spoken with experts through my journey of having a kid with dyslexia. And I've determined that something the borough president could do is quite literally offer to screen every Manhattan kindergartner for dyslexia. There's a pre-screen that is offered by a number of companies. It takes less than 10 minutes and costs less than $5 a pop. It would point parents toward understanding whether their child has a reading disability, and that is the way to kickstart a child's education, probably more than anything else. And we just haven't focused enough on reading differences among our children.
Thank you. Let's talk about land use and housing. As I kept previewing, we're going to get here. We're here. Senator, let's stick with you. Councilmember Powers has referenced, I think, a couple of times the sort of rezoning of the city under City of Yes for housing opportunity that the city council passed. The council added in a bunch of funding for affordable housing subsidies and other housing policies under a City for All banner. So it was a combination of the rezoning proposal that came through the City Planning Commission that was changed by the council a bit, and then some additions from the council in that final deal. So the question to you, Senator, is if you had been in the city council, would you have supported the City of Yes for housing opportunity with the City for All package that came to a final vote in the council? If so, why? If not, why not?
Yeah. Yes. And I commend the council and their leadership for supporting it. In the state, we're the ones who kicked in $1 billion, just to be clear, which I strongly supported for City of Yes. Look, I think we need a City of Yes. I think we need a borough of yes. I think we need a state of yes, because there is a crisis when more than 30% of New Yorkers, this is shocking, more than 30% of New Yorkers pay more than half of their income on rent. I don't know when I think about my daughters whether they're going to be able to afford the rent. So absolutely support it. We need to expand it further. We need to cut red tape. We need to make certain that commercial conversions, the ones that the council member, to his credit, was talking about in Midtown, can happen more smoothly and more quickly by cutting some red tape around those regulations that we checked date back to the 1870s.
And so let me follow up with you one more time. You have a part of your housing platform is to requiring affordable housing in all new development. Can you explain how that would work and how you would respond to concerns that such a requirement would stifle growth as opposed to encouraging it?
We really mean on housing projects that are on city and state-owned land, where we can have the most leverage. Look, some folks in this room actually fought for expanded affordability at the World Trade Center site, Building 5. I feel like if it's city or state-owned land, the first negotiating point should be 100% affordable. That's our property, not the private developers. One of the other things I want to do is get a real estate financial analyst in the borough president's office to help community boards understand when a developer says, I can only build 30% affordable, why can't you build more? To check the math. And I think that would be a great addition and a resource for our community board.
And just so I understand it and everybody, so when you're saying require affordable housing in all new development, you're talking about on publicly owned land only. You're not.
Yeah, I think it would be probably a constitutional issue to do something other than that. But I plan to be as aggressive as possible when it comes to city and state-owned land. And I also feel that, look, the state and the city need to use their bonding authority to build affordable housing.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank
Bonding authority. Got it. We got that in. Councilmember Powers, where has the city and state gone right? You've already indicated a couple of these things. You don't need to go back through all of it, but anything else you want to mention where the city or the state has done something positive on this front in recent years? And what's the next steps? Where have things fallen short?
Where's the
On
city?
housing policy.
Housing policy. Look, when we passed the citywide housing plan, I wish we did more. And I frankly think we made some cuts that hurt our ability to grow in the way that we meaningfully have to. If you look at, we both grew up here, Calvin and I, we're both facing this housing crisis. I'm not saying that as a slide. I'm saying that like as an honest thing. We are facing that housing crisis that we're talking about. It's not in the future. And I think many of us think it's in the future. It's here today. And that means that when you look at the polling numbers right now on young New Yorkers, it's something like 70% of them are demanding that we build more housing because they frankly don't know how to get to the other side of this housing crisis.
What's next on housing policy?
So next on housing is let's rezone Midtown South. I want to build 100,000 new homes here in Manhattan. That's double our capacity, our planned capacity. We need to continue to do big plans, citywide plans. We have rezonings in Manhattan that we have to go forward on. And look, what we can't do is be like, yeah, let's do it. And then let's do 10% of the plan that we actually say we're going to do and play this game. If we're going to say we're going to do it, we have to be bold and big. I would be happy to also talk about the role of the borough president in that. Frankly, I think we have to stop this stranglehold that parochial interests and local interests have on our ability to build new housing in this city. And I am proposing that we move the borough president in the ULURP process to a place.
But we're getting to that. We're getting to that.
Okay.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Sutton,
Held.
on housing policy at the city and state levels, what's something you've seen that you've liked? What's something you think needed to be different or needed to go further or not as far? What's your sort of general assessment on housing policy? This has been obviously one of, along with public safety, the biggest policy areas of discussion over the last few years. What do you think is going right and what do you think is going wrong?
Yeah, yes to yes. I think that 90% of the work that we do in the emergency rooms is placement, finding out where you're going to live, because most people come there because they don't have a place to go. And if you build more housing units, that takes away a lot of preventable emergency room visits and hospital stays and missions, and therefore makes our lives easier. I think we need to identify all the potential. Instead of fighting over breadcrumbs when the pie is over there, empty commercial real estate has doubled in the last 5 years, 10 to 20%. It's only going to head in that direction because of remote work. Residential vacancy rates have dropped to 1.4%. I mean, do the math. We should expedite the conversion of empty commercial real estate to truly affordable housing. And if it's not up to code yet, do transitional and supportive housing with wraparound social services on on-site job training and recruitment. So those on the street, like not just our vulnerable New Yorkers, all of us is one hospital bill, medical scare, and job loss away from becoming unhoused ourselves. I've seen it. It's happened to my friends and my colleagues that if you need a roof over your head, you're on a pathway within months to stability, to becoming job-holding, tax-paying, rent-paying New Yorkers within months, which revenue can go back into increasing more housing construction. We're expanding the timeline so that other neighborhoods have time to breathe and identify areas where they can build more housing, because you can't have density with dignity, and therefore lower the cost for all New Yorkers when you increase the supply.
Thank you. All right, let's get into ULURP. A key power of the borough president's office is advisory, but it's an important step in the land use review process that includes various advisory and required approvals for projects that necessitate a zoning change, ultimately through the city council, but with non-binding advice from the borough president along the way. So, Senator Hoylman,
Sigal.
Senator Hoylman-Sigal, forgive me. What's good and what's
My
broke?
14-year-old would correct you if it wasn't me, so I preemptively did that.
I met you as Hoylman, and it's
Yes,
sorry, it's
I know.
imprinted in my brain, but I'm working on it.
Me too.
So on ULURP, what's good? What's working? And is anything broken? Is anything problematic? Would you change the process? There's a charter revision commission right now that the mayor impaneled that is considering putting some major changes on the ballot. There's a whole menu of things there.
Yep.
There's other ideas. What's working about the current land use review process, and what, if anything, do you think should be changed?
Well, I agree with what the council member referred to as having the borough president a more centralized role, and perhaps, look, it would have to go through the city council and the charter revision commission at some point, but moving the borough president's role to one of being determinative rather than just advisory. That certainly would, again, the borough president's the only one with that 360 view who can, see the bigger picture. There's something to be said for member deference, and I think it should be certainly considered, but it shouldn't be the end all or be all of projects getting built or not, especially when we have this current housing emergency. But I think what works in the borough president's realm with the community boards is the fact that, a mentor of mine recently said, New York is a bottom-up, not a top-down city. And that means that the community boards are so key in understanding their neighborhoods and making land use decisions. Yes, I know some of our friends and allies in the housing movement think that they get in the way, and I'm not going to suggest that they don't, but that also requires appointing good community board members and making sure that they have expertise at their fingertips, like the real estate financial analyst, and I want to provide them, and ensuring that they have credibility. And part of that credibility, because community boards are advisory, we know that, they're voluntary folks who spend time out of their day helping their neighborhood, but they need to be represented as a way that suggests they know what they're talking about. So that's why you need diversity on boards, that's why you need credibility from the boards, and that's why you need expertise to provide them the tools so they can make the right decisions.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. I guess I jumped ahead of the question
Yeah,
earlier.
that's great.
Look, I am proposing that the borough president is a final and determinative vote on land use actions with the right purview, the right resources, and the right ability to see what is a housing crisis, to both respond to the local and community concerns here and negotiate on behalf of those communities, but also, frankly, not to be a stranglehold by deeply parochial interests that can really hurt our ability to grow as a city and to have reasonable housing growth here in the city. I proposed that on the campaign trail. I'm saying it again, and I hope the Charter Revision Commission enacts that policy. I know there's under consideration, but I hope they do something as bold as that, because we cannot, I'm invoking, I think, like Calvin here, you can't put a Band-Aid on an emergency crisis here. You have to treat it like with urgency. And we are at a point where it's a 1.4 vacancy rate. Rents are skyrocketing in Manhattan. It is my generation here that is facing that housing crisis and that large question of Manhattan versus New Jersey and Connecticut. I said this the other day, you should not, I'm not moving anywhere. I am feet on the ground in Manhattan, but it's hard and it's getting harder for folks, and young people particularly, but seniors too, are responding by saying, go out and add more housing, make it more affordable. So my proposal, again, put the borough president at the end, let them be the final determinative voice in that process, and let's get some housing built.
Yeah, I'm all for making the borough president's office less advisory, more determinant, having be binding. And also I like the direction and expediting it from 30 days to 5 days, because we are in a mass casualty and a housing crisis right now. In the hospital, when we go through a mass casualty, we do away with hospital politics. We shift away from trying to make every one person, every one patient, every department happy to doing the greatest good for the greatest number. And recognizing that, we have to all roll up our sleeves and do our parts. And regarding community boards, like, I work late shifts. I've done overnight shifts. It's not fair that for the last 10 years doing these late shifts, I can't attend a single community board meeting. And then somebody moves in with their car, they're retired, they're from a different country, and then they have all the time in the world to go to a community board meeting making decisions on my behalf. And I'm like, what's going on? So we need to increase not just the representation, but also the accessibility for community board meetings and ensure they're truly diverse and truly representative of the communities they're supposed to represent, so that I can rely on them as localized triage for all the neighborhoods, so I can make a well-informed decision to move our city forward.
Have you been to any community board meetings?
I've been trying. I mean, the ad hoc ones that are after the meetings or coming late.
Do you, from what you have witnessed, again, not necessarily attending many, if any, but do you think there is a valuable role for community boards in the city? Okay, I'm just making sure where that train of thought was
100%.
going. Okay, continuing on housing, we have apparently, although it's sometimes hard to know exactly, some real issues in the rent stabilized housing stock. It varies significantly, it seems, across that housing stock. What is your assessment of the extent of those issues? Do you get the sense that there are thousands and thousands of units in such disrepair that they can't be brought back online without significant investments, perhaps changes in the state law? What's to be done there about rent stabilized housing, and are there updates to the state laws that were significantly changed in 2019 that are needed? Councilmember Powers, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, I'm a rent stabilized tenant. These apartments are really the path to continue to build a working middle class here in the city and give families an ability to continue to afford this city that's getting deeply unaffordable. Yeah, I do believe there is a crisis of disinvestment happening within our rent stabilization and just small housing throughout the city and the state. And I do think the state laws have to be updated to better give them ability to take apartments that are in deep disrepair. I think there is a complicated equation here about which ones are and which ones aren't. But I think without question, we are facing a potential crisis of disinvestment and of our rent stabilization buildings here throughout the city. A lot of small landlords who are going to be unable to afford the next few years. And also, frankly, for tenants, that means there are like thousands of apartments that aren't available for them in neighborhoods all across the city who want the ability to be able to afford a good place to live. So that's like a easy part of the equation if we can fix it. So yes, without question, I think there is a problem here, and I think it's growing.
When
Yeah.
you say the state law might need to be changed, what, in your view, would that look like? I mean, is that just allowing, if there's a certain certification of disinvestment, that those units could be brought back and put on market rents?
No, I don't think we, so like, it's to another point here, which is like, it is important that we protect those apartments as rent stabilized apartments. And the ability to get them to a market rate is fairly non-existent today, obviously in the state law. Look, I think if you can show that the apartment's in deep disrepair here and they actually do need the work, it's not you're just not willing to paint the apartment, but you actually have deep disrepair. I think between the city and state, we can figure out some tax benefit, tax credit to help offset that work and keep them in the rent stabilization system critically.
Senator, what's your assessment of this problem and any solutions you have?
Yeah, I've heard that. It is definitely a talking point of the landlord lobby. And I take it for what it is. These are small business owners, many of the smaller landlords. And one of the things I want to do, Max, is have a small business navigator in the borough president's office to help some of these smaller landlords understand what they can do. I also want to create what I'm calling a Manhattan Tenants Union, because a lot of tenants are protected under our new laws around good cause eviction that prevents their rent from going up more than 10%, generally speaking. And these market rate tenants, many of them young people, don't know that they have these rights at all. So it's not just about building new affordable, as you've suggested. It's about protecting what we have in terms of rent-regulated apartments. Rent-regulated apartments are a crucial part of the three-legged stool for affordability in our housing stock. And so we certainly would have to look at the data. I think it would be a good report. The borough president has this 360 view. You hear about smaller landlords complaining about the lack of ability to make improvements. Well, let's see the data. Let's have a Manhattan report, and let's see if we need to create advocacy around that issue. But right now, I haven't yet been persuaded.
I do think there have been a couple recent reports. I think Furman Center says in the Budget Commission, but right now you're not persuaded that there's some crisis that needs action.
I'm not yet, but certainly that is the job of the borough president to make that determination. Okay. I'm concerned about the rights of tenants, the rights of both rent regulated. We need a rent freeze, and I strongly support it. And we need to make certain that our tenants who are in market rate apartments know their rights.
We've raised community boards a little bit. Let's hear from each of you about how you would approach the community board appointment process. Are there things that you would do to shift how that process works? I believe whoever takes office as borough president next year will be navigating the beginning of the term limits for for community boards that were instituted by a charter revision pre-pandemic, so a lifetime ago, basically. How would you approach navigating the institution of term limits in community boards? And how would you approach just generally the appointment process to community boards? Dr. Sun, let's start with you.
I think it's just a segue from what we discussed, in that we need to make sure those community boards are truly reflective of the neighborhoods they're representing, and ensuring an application process that you are a shift worker or a central worker, that you're a non-traditional community board member that otherwise can't attend 7 p.m. meetings, that your voice is included, and we give you the accessibility in order to tune in remotely or see a recording and having a buy-in of your voice when it comes to speaking on behalf of your neighborhood. In the same vein, we also need to ensure that there is a bar of understanding what it takes to be a community board member. There has to be a minimum level of competency of what your responsibilities are and what is required and is necessary, and also the context of what you're signing up for, in that we're in the mass casualty in housing, a housing crisis. So we all have to do our part, roll up our sleeves, and not just put the burden on the more vulnerable neighborhoods to just build that housing. And finally, also as a community board member, you should also let us know if there's any empty real estate space that can be converted, or any landlords that have empty apartments that haven't been renovated that we can identify and make available for the aspiring New Yorker.
Councilmember Powers, how would you approach this, and how would you sort of try to start working in the term limit?
Yeah, thank you. Look, with term limits coming, I'm pledging to like a fully independent process for appointing. We're going to use a screening panel, a little bit of modified version of what happened in the past, and I think it needs to be brought back, which is we need to have people of all different walks of life coming to serve on our community boards. I want New Yorkers and Manhattanites to feel like this is like a civic duty you can do in your neighborhood, even for a short time span. It's not a lifetime appointment. It's an 8-year appointment here with term limits, and let's get an independent process so we can bring in unusual or different voices to it. I think what Dr. Sun says is a real issue, frankly. And think about being my dad was a small business owner. He owned a restaurant. Think about being a small business owner and trying to have to navigate owning your business, operating it, and then having to make these community board meetings that go 4 hours long. So I think one frankly easy amendment here is for some of those things, yeah, do them during the daytime, offer opportunities for people to come and have hearings that are in alternate time periods. I think that's a great idea. I'm stealing it from you. I think it's a great idea. But I think independence in the community boards is really important. We need people who are young and of different life persuasions here to serve on them. So that's my pledge: a new independent screening model for new community board members.
Senator?
Yeah, I certainly agree with having community boards as independent. When I worked on the Scott Stringer transition team, when he became borough president, we instituted the independent screening panel model, and that's something that I would certainly continue. Look, I'm not happy about term limits. I got to be honest, Max. I learned from Doris Steether, Ed Ma, Tony Dapolito when I served on a community board for 10 years in the village, and you know, they are a repository of information that is invaluable. But it goes back to the credibility of community boards. That's why they need to be diverse. That's why they need to look like the neighborhoods they represent. That's why they need to have people with disabilities, people of color, more women. And yes, professionals. One way we can handle professionals who have a lot, and parents and others who have a lot of outside activities other than community boards, is allow more virtual accessibility on community boards. I have a bill in Albany to help just that. But really, a community board, because it's advisory and because the members are appointed, is only as effective as the board is credible. That's why, frankly, we got to get lobbyists off community boards. We should ban elected officials from appointing their staff members to community boards. Community board members need to represent their community and nobody else.
Quickly, why is a lobbyist a different job than any other job?
Well, because if a lobbyist has an interest that might be before the board, I believe that, you know, it damages the, shall we say, joie de vivre, or whatever the term is for the community board members, you know, to feel like they are representing the community's best interests. And that's why I'd have a blanket ban.
There could be any number of ways where someone on a community board has a professional conflict of interest. Are you maybe more talking about just a conflict of interest policy that needs to be strengthened, or is it, I mean, are there any other professions you think?
No, I certainly think they should be subject to the public officers law. Like and as far as I know, they are. I think there's a question whether they should have to fill out financial disclosures. I think that's probably too onerous for volunteers. But I do think, you know, lobbyists serving as members of a voting body is problematic. I couldn't look to one of my colleagues in the state Senate who's a lobbyist and think that they actually have, you know, the best interests at heart, but yet are representing a private interest at the same time. We need to make that clear to the wider Manhattan Borough.
What do you think of that proposal
I have no problem with it.
of not having lobbyists on committee?
Look, I think you might want to expand that to people that also have other types of conflict of interest. Like, how do you handle architects? How do you handle others? Like the chair of Community Board 6 when I was on was an architect. How do you handle that? So, yeah, look, I think you have to make sure there's clear lack of conflicts of interest here on community boards or any other body. And I think they're different than a legislative body for sure. But, I think the independent model, honestly, for doing this actually screens for a lot of that anyway. So people that you can have a conversation with what their merits are, what their background is. Like, I think that is actually, frankly, the best way rather than creating sort of niche carve-outs.
Let's talk a little bit about something essential in Manhattan, which is mass transit. I believe all of you have been supportive of congestion pricing and given it strong reviews so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. But my question really is, as borough president, what do you see as sort of next steps to strengthening mass transit in the borough? Are there expansion projects you want to pursue? Are there elements related to safety, was referenced earlier on the subways, that you want to see enacted? Broad question, but what's next for mass transit in Manhattan? Dr. Sun, let's start with you again.
I'm a Manhattan boy. I do not drive or own a car. I'm a proud owner of a non-driver state ID. Last time I ever drove was driver's ed back in high school. I did it for 1 week and I hated it. And I'm grateful that I never had to leave New York. I've been around the world. You don't need a driver's license to travel the world and also run a small business. But I do think that our mass transit in Manhattan needs to be improved. The quality has to be up to a standard where people don't want to evade the fare. They want to actually invest in it because the fare that they're paying is actually going through improvements they can see visibly, and identifying all the subway stations or bus lanes that can be more accessible, increase the mobility of New Yorkers. Only 30% of subway stations are accessible. We need to increase that so we create more buy-in, so more people want to take mass transit and less likely want to take their cars in. I believe we come from a place of abundance where we should reward good behavior and not punish people. And that being said, we also need to revamp the bus map. I take the buses all the time, but when I look at a bus map, I also get intimidated while riding on the bus. So improve the buy-in for New Yorkers to use buses and harden the bus lane so they can go faster and improve the mobility and traffic and decrease the traffic for all Manhattan.
Senator Hoylman-Sigal?
Yeah, I appreciate what Dr. Sun said. Accessibility is really key. We do need to certainly lean into the capital dollars we're getting from congestion pricing. And the borough president should be fighting for every subway station, like on the Lower East Side, that doesn't have an elevator, so that folks who may require one or parents with strollers can actually get on the damn platform. I think mass transit is a human right. I really do believe that, especially when every one of us depends on it. I do have a driver's license. I don't have a car. I think I'm a pretty good driver. My husband would disagree, but certainly working closely with the MTA Max, getting capital dollars into Manhattan stations, expanding, as was referenced earlier, express buses and busways, creating more bike lanes and micro mobility opportunities, but also regulating e-bikes.
What do you want to do to regulate e-bikes? And then we'll got to wrap up your answer quickly.
Okay. We're going to talk about that later?
No, now.
Oh,
what do you want to do
now.
just briefly, what do you want to do to regulate e-bikes?
E-bikes every commercial e-bike should be licensed and have a license plate so enforcement could ensue. Commercial e-bikes, thank you. Every e-bike driver for a private delivery company should carry insurance. More than 90% of them do not. And every e-bike rider should be trained, but the onus has to be on the app delivery company. They're making millions off of our public infrastructure.
Thank you.
And we need to ensure that the unfair algorithms, the time clock that these riders work under, are eliminated.
Thank you. Next on mass transit, and then I'll prompt you at the end to go on e-bikes, but
Yeah,
with
sure.
mass transit first.
Thank you. Look, I've been talking about mass transit.
E-bikes are becoming a
Okay.
mass transit of sorts.
Happy to chat, but let's talk about mass transit
Yes,
first. Look, I put out a plan around our bus system. I agree. It is not only complicated, they are slow, but they are really important to our entire transportation system here in the city. It's a safe and affordable way to get around. So I've talked about a busway that would speed up bus service, similar to the one I championed on 14th Street, talking about other ways we can move it faster as well. The borough president should be like the bus borough president here to actually look at the bus map and help untangle that. And I'm riding every bus to show how complicated, but how important it is to that. We should be making sure every single Manhattan public school student has access to a free and fair Metro card. That's actually an Omni card. That's actually not the case here today. We should be making sure those countdown clocks actually work. We should be making sure we're investing in places like Fifth Avenue, speed up bus service, but also, yes, add in the pedestrian and also cycling elements there as well. We need a big vision and not just sort of the patchworks, and that's what I think the borough president's office can really lean into. We have subway signal upgrades on the west side that we need to take care of to make sure we can speed up the capacity of our subway system here. That we can be able to carry and move trains a lot faster here in the borough. But what we need is a committed borough president to that. I've committed myself to that as part of this campaign. We'll continue to commit that moving forward.
Thank you. E-bikes.
Yeah, look, I agree. The commercial ones need to be licensed. They need to have some level of oversight from their app companies. And frankly, we don't have enough app companies right now that are under any regulatory system. We're working in the city council right now to fix that. I also have a bill to require that we're talking about mopeds. We're not talking about mopeds enough too. Those are actually part of the problem as well. We have a lot of unlicensed and dangerous mopeds. We're working on a bill right now in the council that require the third-party apps to make sure they are licensed and registered, because those are speeding through our streets as well, going largely unregistered and unlicensed as well. So we need to combine both and actually have a regulatory system that keeps people safe, and also invest in the infrastructure too. Like, it is important we have safe places to go when I'm walking around the street. I know where to expect people are coming from. Those places that don't have infrastructure feel like the most dangerous parts of the street to me right now.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything on e-bikes briefly? 30 seconds?
Let's harden e-bike lanes, and because they're going at 30 miles per hour, they can seriously harm you. That's a board question that emergency physicians have to answer correctly before we can be licensed and certified, is that if you get hit at 30 miles per hour, you have a statistically 45% chance of survival, as opposed to 20 miles per hour is 95%. That's an actual thing. It's any vehicle. So because e-bikes can go that fast, they have to be licensed and registered. It'll make our lives easier because there's accountability. But again, foot that bill to the billion-dollar venture capital-backed app companies and ensure that we have to encourage them to hold their e-bike delivery drivers and personnel accountable, but also train them and not punish our most vulnerable New Yorkers. And they foot the bill, they pay for all of that. They have to understand they have to serve New Yorkers, not harm them.
All right. We are in our last 8-ish minutes here with the candidates. There's a lot of things that can be under the borough president's purview, some of which I didn't ask about, but I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to contact the candidates or look on their websites if there's something we didn't get to here today. But I have a extensive lightning round of yes, no, or otherwise short answer questions here. So we're going to get through a lot of stuff here in our last 8 minutes. These are really just yes, no, very short answer. And I'll jump around who starts each time on this. Okay, let's start right here with Dr. Sun and move down the line. A casino in Manhattan, yes or no?
It depends.
It depends. Councilmember Powers.
Skeptical.
Breaking the rules already.
Needs community, really would need to community, deep community support to go for it. I'm
Skeptical.
skeptical. Yeah.
Senator.
100% absolutely no.
Okay. Some of these are more fun than others, as you're about to hear. If you had to live in another borough, which would it be? Councilmember Powers.
I can't believe you have to make me choose this question. I'm a lifelong Manhattan.
Choose.
Queens.
Senator.
I don't know of any other boroughs.
Hop out. Okay.
Little Island.
Little Island. All right. Credit to the council member for actually answering the question. All right.
Point.
He gets a bonus point for this.
Senator, you've had a stressful week. You get to do one thing in Manhattan on the weekend to unwind. What is it?
Take my 7-year-old to the Museum of Natural History and look at the new apex stegosaurus. To be specific, that's what we did last weekend.
I'm a huge music fan. I've championed saving our venues here during pandemic. So being out somewhere, either a Broadway show or live music.
Pickup Park, I've never been to before or haven't been in a long time, and have an all-day picnic and dining outdoors.
Okay. Council member, should the affordable senior LGBTQ housing development known as Haven Green move ahead as planned for years, or be scrapped and rethought? Move ahead or rethought?
It's moving forward. And so scrapping it now was set years back on important housing.
Senator?
No, I really support the Elizabeth Street Garden. And, you know.
So rethink it. we're just going to leave it there.
Rethink,
You can
rethink. Don't destroy beautiful public space
Doctor?
if you can.
If it creates more green space, we can modify and make it better.
Starting here with Dr. Sun. Do you believe that NYCHA infill housing development is a key component to addressing the borough's housing crisis? Yes or no?
As long as the NYCHA residents are in favor, yes.
Councilmember.
Same.
Yes.
And Senator.
What was the question again, though?
Do you
Because I heard someone say.
do you believe what? See what
Yes.
the difference?
yes.
One voice can make a difference. You want me to repeat it?
No, I'm
Okay.
yes. I was just-
Infill development as a key component to addressing the
Yes,
borough's-
yes,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
All right. Should the Rikers Island closure plan, including the new Manhattan jail, move ahead as designed by law as soon as possible? It won't meet the current legal deadline, but should it move ahead as quickly as possible, or again, be scrapped, rethought? Councilmember.
To write the whole Rikers plan?
Well, it's
Oh.
all one package.
No, we have to close Rikers Island now. So we have to move forward.
Do the plan as quickly as possible.
We have to move the plan forward. I do think the Chinatown jail, the community is asking to look at a smaller version of that. I would support looking at that.
Senator?
No to the Chinatown jail. If that means delaying the Rikers plan moving forward, so be it. I think
Doctor?
it was bungled out of the gate.
Yes to closing Rikers, no to the mega jail.
Okay. You've all, correct me if I'm wrong, you've all said in this conversation you favor more busways, correct?
I'm
No?
championing more busways,
Okay.
yes.
So I'm skipping that one, but I'm going into other than the current 14th Street and the proposal for 34th Street, what's one other location you think should have a busway? Councilmember?
We got to do more uptown, so I'm not going to pick a street, but somewhere north of 34th Street,
Senator,
north of.
Any location for a busway?
I agree. Really, any major crosstown artery should be considered.
Doctor?
I just won 72, 79, 86, 96, 110th, 125th.
Okay. Yeah,
137.
yes,
He was about to cut me off.
going to Senator here first. Yes or no, ban all non-essential helicopter flights around Manhattan, including tourists or commutes between Manhattan and the Hamptons?
How can I say yes more loudly? Yes.
Councilmember?
Yes, and we passed a bill just to do a big part of that.
We need that, yes.
Okay. This is a little bit of a different one, but great, iffy, or bad? Penn Station going over to Amtrak and the feds and Andy Byford. Great idea, iffy idea, bad idea. Councilmember.
I mean, Andy Byford is a great idea because I love Andy Byford. Yeah, but I will say, and I will give the senator credit. I think he has a bill to ban Trump's name from being on it.
I do.
I agree with that.
Okay, so maybe in the iffy category for now. Senator.
Yeah, I mean, God bless Andy Byford. He worked for Andrew Cuomo. Now he's working for Donald Trump. Oh, my goodness.
Doctor.
Yeah, if it weren't for Trump.
Okay. We already talked about congestion pricing. All right, last couple here. This is another, this is along with the other borough question, this is my favorite. Dr. Sun, if you had to be public advocate or controller, which would you choose?
Well, this is a little personal. I did start off running for public advocate.
I started with you. Public advocate, okay. Council member, public advocate or controller?
Public advocate. I want to keep advocating on the housing issues here.
Senator.
Manhattan Borough President. Since you're letting us get away with these non-answers.
Yeah, well. I have to be respectful of people's time. Okay, you just mentioned the former governor. Senator, who are you supporting in the Democratic primary for mayor?
I'm focused on my race. How's that for innovation?
All right, another non-answer. Dr. Sun, who are you supporting in the Democratic primary for mayor?
Still 25 days. I will not rank someone that's accused of sexual assault, killing in our nursing home residents, and accused of corruption.
Okay, council member?
I already said I'm writing in Jalen Brunson, so maybe Ben Max number 2.
All right.
There you go.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you. We're going to leave it there. Please join us in 2 weeks for Congressman Goldman for City Law Breakfast. Thank you all for being here. Be ready to vote later this month. Thank you, candidates, for being here, and good luck on the campaign trail.
All right.